Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Here again, the words of the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Romans. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. It is here on this now, and what I consider also verb hope, that I would like to hang the sermonic spotlight this morning. Look at your neighbor and say, good news is coming. Never give up hope. Beloved, hope will always find a way. It has been said that there are many things that you can live without, but the one thing you cannot make it without is hope. Hope is an attitude that can defy the odds when the situation and even the facts are stacked against you. Hope is trusting in a power outside of yourself more than trusting in the power of the situation. This four-letter word gives you a motive and a reason to keep living. In essence, hope can keep you alive when nothing else can. Hope can keep you alive when the prognosis is bleak. Hope can keep you alive when the doctors say you are out of remission. Hope can keep you alive when all signs say give up. There's a story that I read of a 5-year-old little girl who had been found alive after having been missing along with her mother for 10 days. When they found the little girl, she was sitting next to the body of her dead mother. Their car had gone over a ravine and landed in a wooded area. After finding and talking to the girl, rescuers discovered that the mother had lived for a day or so after the crash and was constantly telling her daughter to keep hoping because somebody was going to show up. The little girl said she just kept waiting on the somebody to show up. When reporters asked her who that somebody was, she responded, "The person Mommy told me was coming." She didn't know who Mommy was talking about, but just the fact that she was told somebody was going to show up was enough to keep her going and keep her hoping. So she said she ate some noodles that were in the car and she drank some Gatorade that was also there to keep her healthy until somebody showed up. Oh, beloved, this story ought to make you want to shout. Life seems to have crashed for you. And it looks like you ought to just crawl up and die. But hope is telling you that somebody is coming. All you need to do is stay in shape so that when they do show up, you can get up. Hope can keep you alive when everything else begins to fall apart. Now, I must say, I think I need to tell you that hope is different from making a wish. When you make a wish, you are looking for something that you know is not going to happen. Hope, on the other hand, is being certain that things will not stay as they are. being able to see beyond where you are and instead seeing where you are about to go. It is having a confident expectation. It's not about what God might do. It's not about what might happen. It's the conviction of expectancy in the face of contextual contradictions. That is what Advent, beloved, is all about. We wait in hopeful expectation for the salvation, the promise of God. When you have hope, your condition or situation does not matter because you are not defined or confined by the facts of where you now find yourself. You are foolish enough to believe, to know that things are not going to stay like they are. And I say foolish because when you have hope, you can look like a fool to folk around you who are calculating your future based upon what they see as the reality of your present situation. But you know something. You know something that they may not know. That whenever you calculate without God, it results in a miscalculation. That's why those who trust in God can always say, no matter how dark it might look, don't count me out. This week I was drawn in my reading to the second book of Kings, chapter 7. And there is an example in there of hope at work. Let me share it with you. Now there were 4 leprous men outside the city gate who said to one another, "Why should we sit here until we die? If we say, 'Let us enter the city,' the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. But if we sit here, we shall also die. Therefore, let us desert to the Armenian camp. If they spare our lives, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die." So they arose at twilight to go to the Armenian camp. But when they came to the edge of the Armenian camp, there was no one there at all. For the Lord had caused the Armenian army to hear the sound of chariots and of horses and the sound of a great army, so that they said to one another, "The king of Israel has hired the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to fight against us." So they fled away in the twilight and abandoned their tents and their horses and their donkeys, leaving the camp just as it was, and fled for their lives. When these leprous men had come to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent, ate and drank, carried off silver, gold, and clothing, and went and hid them. Then they came back, entered another tent, carried off things from it, and went and hid them. And then they said to one another, "What we're doing is wrong. This is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning light, we will be found guilty. Therefore, let us go and tell the king's household." Beloved, as I read this, leaping from the pages and in between the sentences was a story of hope. We find 4 men who suffered from the disease of leprosy. Their leprous situation should have had them resigning themselves to a life of misery. They had been put out of the city and forced to live on a colony with other persons who suffer from the same fate as they do. They had been forced to the outskirts of society. Society had set up rules and regulations for them because their worth was based on their condition. Nobody wanted to be around them. Nobody could touch them, and they couldn't touch anyone else. Everywhere they went, they had to announce their arrival by yelling, "Unclean! Unclean!" And can I take the argument just a little bit further here as I thought about it? You know, leprosy was a skin disease, which means that their problem was a problem they could not hide. It was a situation that everybody could see. I mean, it's one thing when you can hide your issue. It's one thing when you can masquerade as if everything is all right because you can hide your situation. But how do you handle it when you are going through stuff that is in the public domain? How do you handle it when you're not known by your name, but you're known by your condition? How do you handle it when the definition of your destiny is determined by the description of your dysfunction? You know, in view of the ancient community, what those with leprosy had was more important than who they were. I will take a moment to encourage some folk out there. You know, there's some man, some woman right now who is in a position like those with leprosy. People know you by your problem, but they know nothing about you as a person. In fact, people have set limits for you based on your issue. And for our community, it's our skin issue. We become statistically foreclosed on before we get started because of our skin issue. Society has set rules that seek to govern our movements because of a skin issue. Our skin, by being different from the larger society, makes us deficient in the eyes and minds of many people. Our human-made skin problem has preassigned our value in society, and the enemy has just about convinced us that things will never change. But when you read this story in its entirety, you know that there was a famine in the land. So the leaders put the leper colony outside of the city and left those folks there to die. And can you imagine the look on the face of the gatekeeper of the city, who had left the lepers out there to die when they saw them blessed, when they saw them healthy? I imagine he probably began to scratch his head in wonder and amazement, trying to figure out how they survived. How did they survive the Middle Passage? How did they survive Jim Crow and Jane Crow segregation? How did they survive this Make America Great Again mentality that seeks to bring us back to what America had been before? How did they survive? And I wish I could have given them a script, because the first thing I would have had them say to him was, "We know what you did, and we know what you thought, but don't count us out. We're strong. We're resilient, because hope is stronger than death. Hope will always find a way." But I submit this morning, beloved, that you must have your mind in shape so that you are able to think your way through the trials of despair and doom. You have to, first of all, get tired of telling the enemy, of the enemy telling you where you can and cannot go, what you can and cannot do, who you can and cannot be. That's what our ancestors did. You got to be tired enough of it to rise up. Quit throwing your pity party. Quit acting like the tail instead of the head. You ought to tell somebody, you can stay here if you want to, but I'm about to rise up. Now these 4 men, beloved, were still lepers. one thing that I realized was that God did not change their condition. This was not a healing story. God did not change their condition, but God changed their status. When you live life more abundantly, you can still have conditions, but you can get a new status. God is looking for folk, I believe, who are willing to rise up and move up without having to change who they are. God can bless us right where we are. We don't have to pretend to be colorblind. We need to understand that God is able to bless all of us in our various places, in our various stations. God can bless you being who you are. All you have to do is make the decision to rise up in hope rather than stay down. You have to make it up in your mind to be counted and not discounted. You have to press forward with a determination to be counted in this society and not counted out because of your condition. You must insist on being counted because of your condition, because of your skin, because of your issue, because of your rightful place in this world as a child of God. Some of us feel, beloved, and I have shared this with my son and daughter on several occasions, that we are nobody and nothing unless we are surrounded by people. Beloved, having people around you is not necessarily having people with you. As my grandfather used to say, all folks your color may not be your kind. You can have company and still be lonely. Because loneliness is not the absence of another presence, but loneliness is the absence of a suitable presence. And everyone who is around you may not be suitable for you. I hope I'm helping someone this Sunday morning. And so as we think about the four lepers, we must understand the culture and norms of the day. If you were a leper, then you were relegated to living in what was called a leper colony, i.e. the ghetto. You had to live with others who had the same condition as you. It was said that these colonies were made up of large numbers of persons because leprosy was a common malady of the day. You could not live in the city or even come to the city. In segregation, you would live with hundreds of others who had what you had. And when you read the text from 2 Kings, you will notice that the Bible talks about only 4 lepers. Only 4 lepers. Now, I believe that there's never a waste of words in the scriptures. Many lepers lived in the colony, but only 4 were mentioned in this text. These 4 had made the decision that they refused to give up hope. These 4 had made the decision that they refused to be counted out. And to me, that suggests that maybe they were the only 4 in the colony who refused to resign themselves to a life of less than. Maybe they were the only 4 who refused to allow their condition to get into their consciousness to the extent that they felt they were what their condition said they were. These 4 lepers had the same condition. They had the same attitude. They had the same spirit. They weren't the only ones with the condition, but they were the only ones who were trying to get over it. They were the only ones who wouldn't allow society to dictate the power of their hope. They refused to allow their condition to set the stage for how they viewed themselves in the context of the greater society. They had hope. And hope will always find a way. The text tells us to make sure we have people around who have the right mentality. Listen, everybody who is around you may not be with you. which means that you need to get them away from you. Don't hang out with people who are trying to bring you into agreement with being what your situation says you ought to be. We must commune with people who have the right attitude. Because some folks want you to stay like you are because they are living complacently in a similar situation. Because misery does indeed love company. Y'all heard that one too. Can I take this just a step further? These four men were encouragement for each other. Even though they all had the same issue, their encouragement did not come from folk who weren't going through what they were going through. You know, sometimes you don't need a word from people who have not walked where you are walking, or who are not walking now where you are walking now. Sometimes you need to be encouraged by somebody who is going through what you are going through. That's why you need support groups. That's why you need other people around you who are able to understand where you're going. In support groups, everybody has the same issue, but the members are there because they have the right attitude about getting out of it and over it. When my spirit gets low, I don't need somebody who isn't going through a similar situation to tell me to be of good cheer. What I need is somebody to tell me that we can wait on God together. One of the things that I've also discovered as I read this text was that your initiative will initiate God's action. Here's what I mean. You know, one of the things we always need to remember is that God is always active, even when God seems to be absent. You know, they say just because you can't trace him doesn't mean you can't trust him. God is always up to something on your behalf. You don't have to see God to know that God is up to something, because your expectancy and faith are not based on what you see, but they are based on what you know. Now here's the problem though. I can't always see what God is up to. And believe you me, God is not obligated to show it to me, nor to give me a hint or sign to relieve my anxiety. I just have to trust that something is going on for my benefit. And when it's time for me to see that which God has in store for me, God will reveal it. And that's our struggle. But this text suggests, beloved, that God makes moves where you need it. Just as important, your initiative will initiate God's action on the issue. Hope is not just some philosophy. It is an action. Hope has to move. That's why it's important that we not just be outraged about injustice in this country, but we do something about it, and God will meet us there. It's not just enough to be angry. We must take some action. And when you read this in the entirety of this text in 2 Kings, you discover that the lepers took the hope initiative. The lepers took the initiative at twilight. And I was imagining them going out at dark when it was just about day. They did not just talk about it, but they did something about it. They initiated their deliverance at twilight. And when you read, you discover that God acted in the issue at twilight. The very same moment that they were making their move, God was making God's move. There was an obstacle in the way, but God did not wait to move the obstacle. When they got to the obstacle, God was moving already. God moved when they moved. The minute you make up your mind, beloved, and then get up and move, I believe God will begin to move things out of your way. When you get to where God wants you to be, things will already be in place. Just like the lepers, you won't be able to figure out how to happen. But your job is not to figure it out. Your job is just to enjoy and praise God for it. If He had God had left it for you to deal with, you may have never gotten it. Because God honors your faithful initiative by moving the obstacle when you move for the opportunity. Hope will always find a way. Now the lepers would not know that God had moved until they got to where they were going. God didn't tell them that God was going to move it. God just did it. And beloved, here's some things that I want you to take with you today. There's some things you will never know until you move. There's some things you will never know until you rise up. If you make a move, I believe God will move the obstacles. God honors faith, and faith is not just thinking about it, but faith is doing something about it. When you make the move to get back in school, God will handle the obstacles. When you make the move to get the job, God will handle the obstacles. Somebody here can testify that you got a job that you didn't have any experience for, and you still can't figure out why you're on it. But let me tell you, you made the choice to go for it in faith. And when you made the choice, God got to the interview before you, and I believe God fixed the heart of the interviewer on your behalf. Beloved, do you have something that you need God to work out today? Then I challenge you to make a move right now. And God will start working in the place where you need it. And once you get a blessing, you must also be a blessing. God does not bless you and expect you to keep it to yourself. God blesses you so that you can use your blessing to be a blessing to somebody else. Now we already know that, but in this text, I have seen another twist. You know, and this blew my mind because the lepers were enjoying the blessings of God, and God had these things waiting on them. They just had to go and follow their hope. And in the midst of it all, they had a moment of enlightenment. They said, this ain't right. We need to let folk know what we have found. Now remember, there was a famine in the land, so they had found some relief. And they knew that if they kept what they had found to themselves, then judgment would follow. Give this some thought. The lepers didn't say they were going back to the leper colony to tell their fellow lepers what they had found. They said, let us go to the king's house and tell the king what we found. Now here's my problem. It was the king who put them out of the city. The king was their enemy. They wanted to go back and bless the very folk who put them out, who had segregated them. God says, beloved, sometimes I will test your maturity by blessing you to see if you are willing to help and bless the folk who counted you out and dismissed you and meant you no good. Can you bless your enemies? Can you bless the folk who swore you would never amount to anything? Can you bless the folk who tried to keep you from being blessed? That is spiritual maturity. Because you see, when you're really blessed, you don't have time to hold grudges because you're too grateful. What God gave the lepers was more than they could have ever imagined based on where they had come from. When you know what God has brought you from, you shouldn't have a problem blessing everybody and anybody else. All the lepers wanted to do was live. All they wanted was life, but they got more than life. They got life and got it more abundantly. When you know that God has given you life and given it to you more abundantly, it will make you rejoice, and it will make you, it should make you bless others. When you decide to rise up and move with the hope that is within you, you not only get life, but you get it abundantly. This is the byproduct of moving in hope. That's why the enemy don't want you to rise up. The last thing the enemy wants you to do is rise up, because the last time he tried to keep somebody down, he suffered his greatest defeat. Well, the devil can't take it when people rise up. I'm ending now. Because it becomes a reminder of his greatest defeat. The last time somebody rose up on him, that somebody got up, as the old preachers used to say, with all power in his hands. Every time you rise up, beloved, every time you move in hope, you remind the enemy that the enemy has lost any chance of having power. Now, right now, through Jesus Christ, the first riser, you have the power to get up and move in hope. You don't have to be stuck where you are. Vote folks out who don't like black people. Impeach folk who have abused their office. Join organizations that fight for your rights and for our people. Contact your elected officials. Lend your signature to petitions. March in the streets if you must, but rise up and do something. And God will meet us there. Oh, beloved, keep the faith. Fight the good fight. One day, if we don't give up hope, if we keep moving in the power of hope, justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Amen.